Morning, everybody. If you haven't been with us, we are in a midst of a 12-month kind of sermon series, but it changes every month, just called Traits of Success. And what we've been doing is, I think this is month 7 now. For the 12 months, we're taking one trait each month that we see biblically that leads to success both in this world and also in your spiritual lives. And then we're taking a month and studying it together. Also, each month, what we have is you should have gotten one of these when you came in. If you did not, there's more out on the table. Grab one on your way out. But each month you get a devotion card that will help you kind of stay on task and put us all on the same page for the month. This month we're talking about why stewardship. And the way I describe that is this. It's learning to handle, manage, and distribute your resources in a way that honors God rather than consuming you. So that's what we're going to focus on this month. On the back of this card, it kind of gives a little bit more detail about those things. And then it gives you some scriptures to meditate on or read through this month. As I tell you at the beginning of every month, we want you to take those scriptures, put that card somewhere where you see it each day, and read through those scriptures. One of the things that God will do through the scriptures is He starts to transform how you think, and He starts to transform how you see situations. And one of the great ways He does that, He does it through His Spirit, but He also does it through His Word. And so we want everybody reading those to kind of have a daily time in your schedule that you're reading the scriptures and we're reading the same stuff together as God focuses us as a church, all right? So why stewardship is what we are hitting on today. And in regards to that, we're going to be talking about the destructive nature and the destructive power of money this morning. Is where we're going to be looking at. Now, in order to do that, we have to have an honest discussion about the society we live in. So the way I'm going to start this morning, I'm just going to kind of give you the reality of the society we live in to help you understand the environment you have grown up in. If you're from America and have lived here your whole life, the environment you have grown up in your entire life. So here's some stats. You can get them on the screen as we go through. The first one is this. 1% of the world's population has almost as much wealth as the other 99% combined. When you look at world wealth, the way it works out, the detailed numbers are this. The top 1% of wealthy people in the world actually have 48.2% of the world's wealth. So 1% has 48.2%, which means 99% have the other 51.8% of the world's wealth. Okay, is that not astonishing to think about? 1%. So if you take a room of 100 people, one person you pull out and go, half of the wealth in this room goes to that person. That's how the top 1% is and kind of top heavy our world is. Here's a second stat. If your household makes more than $50,000 a year gross, you are part of the 1%. Okay? This is not what you think of as Americans, but I want you to understand this is a true stat. You just went through tax season, so you should all have a decent knowledge of how much money you brought in as a family unit, as a household this year. If your household brought in gross number of $50,000 a year, you are the 1%. Okay? In America, we always hear the 1% is the people earning like $350,000 a year. No. If you look really what the 1% are, anybody with a household income of $50,000 or more, you're now in the 1%. All right, next stat. 80% of the world lives on less than $10 a day. So 80% of the population of this earth lives on less than $10 a day. That means their yearly gross income is $3,650. So 80% of the world lives on a gross income no greater than $3,650. If your house, 80% of 10. If your household income is over $9,733 a year, you are doing better than most people on the earth. So if you have a household income of just slightly under 10 grand, the $9,733, that is a median income. That means at that number, half the people on earth live above it and half the people on earth live below it. So if you are earning over a gross income of $9,733, you're on the plus side, you're on the positive side of the population of the world. All right? Next one, 2.53 billion people, nearly a third of the world population lives on less than $2 a day. That means their gross income is $730 a year. All right? A third of the world lives on $730 a year. 1.25 billion people live on less than $1.25 a day. That's a gross product or a gross income a year of $456. All right, 1.25 billion people. To be honest with you, I'd say most people sitting in here probably gross more than that in a week or right around that. All right, 400, and that's what a 1.25 billion people earn an entire year. All right, next one. Americans spend less than 10% of their incomes on food. People in impoverished parts of the world spend between 60 to 80% of their income on food. So we spend less than 10. Impoverished nations, they spend 60 to 80% of their income, which means almost everything they're bringing in is just to get food on the table. Americans, this one's amazing, okay? Americans spend more at Christmas, $465 billion, than all but 22 countries' national GDP, gross domestic product. All right? What we spend on in the Christmas season for that 1 month, we as Americans, there are 195 countries in this world. What we spend for Christmas on Christmas items and gifts for each other outpaces 173 countries in this world, their entire national gross domestic product. That's how much they produce as a country. We spend it just on Christmas. Is that not amazing? There's only 22 countries on this earth that produce more GDP than we spend on Christmas. All right? The next one, those who receive U.S. government assistance, which can range anywhere here from about $12,000 a year. If you're getting about $12,000 a year from the government, that puts you in the top 20% of the world population on income. It can range anywhere. If you go to Alaska, you can get up towards about $25,000 a year. So if you're in Alaska and receive government benefits and assistance, you can get 25. That puts you in the top 3% of wealth in the world, just on U.S. government assistance. All right? So here's what I'm going to do. It's a little bit different. You're going to have to do that. Everyone participating here. If you are rich and you are in this room right now, would you please stand and stay standing for a second? So stand up. If you're rich, would you please stand up? If you are rich, please stand up. Okay. Let me help you out a little bit. If you have access to over $12,000 a year as a household income, please stand up because you're rich. So kids, if you live in a house, so if you see your parents standing, you need to stand up. DeMarcus, you bring in more than that. You need to stand up. You two, get up. So you're both there. Kaylee, are you going to ask a question? Yeah, I know. Fine. I will give you an exception, but she has to stand up. All right. So if you are in a household making over $12,000 a year, bringing in $12,000 a year, I see Russell over there. Is Russell back there? Russell, you need to be standing. Imee, you need to be standing. Bruce, you need to be standing. I don't know your incomes, but I can assume I know you're over this. All right? This is why I have you standing. You have to understand, we are so wealthy in this nation. It is hard for us to clearly and honestly understand the influence money has in our lives. We have a hard time accepting it. It's why when I said how many of you are rich, I get about 20% of you. You live in America. You have no clue how rich you are. It's just you're surrounded by so much wealth, you don't think you're rich. In our society, accumulating wealth, finding career success, and obtaining financial prosperity has become the focus of much of our lives. Now you can sit. All right? Here's what I want you to understand. Before I can talk about the destructive nature of money, we have to be able to be honest with ourselves. The only reason we don't think we're rich is because we compare ourselves to the American standard of rich, which is millionaires or people earning hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. We are rich. I tell you what, if we picked up this church right now and flew us all into an African nation and put us out there and I said, now we're sitting with them, how many of you are rich? Are you still going to sit there? No. You're going to be standing up because you'd be feeling guilty to sit there and go, I'm not rich when you see the circumstances they live in. All right? We're filthy rich, and we have to understand that. So let me go to the scriptures now so we have a healthy understanding of the power and destructive nature of money that can happen in our lives. Here's what it says, 1 Timothy chapter 6. We're going to be going through verses 6 through 10, but I'm going to start with 10, and we're going to work backwards, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, because it works a little bit better working the scripture backwards here as I work through it. Here's what it says. It says this: "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, and some people craving money have wandered from the true faith and have pierced themselves with many sorrows." All right, let me read that again. "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, and some people craving money have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows." There is a distinct difference between earning money, having money, using money, versus actually loving money. Okay, there's a distinct difference. So let me answer the first question. What is love of money? What does that really mean? What does it mean that you love money? It doesn't mean you have money. It just means a love of money. Here's the best way I would describe it. A heart that loves money is a heart that puts its hopes, pursuits of pleasure, and puts its trust in what money can offer or purchase for them. Simply put it this way, money takes the role of God in one's life. Money is the one that will provide all the stuff you need in life, not God. And we substitute God and we put money in his place. When you get to that point, you are now at a point that would be considered a love of money. All right? And then in the same scripture, it says this: "Because of the love of money, many have wandered. Many have wandered from the faith. Many have walked away from the faith." Let me help you understand that some as well. Love of money is the same as faith in money. What that means is it's a belief, it's a trust, it's a confidence, it's an assurance that money will meet your needs and make you happy and content. The easiest way we see this in our lives is those when the big lottery things come up, all right? How many of us dream of winning those lotteries? Okay? We dream, man, if I could win the $530 million jackpot, all my problems would be solved. It would take care of everything. I could do so much. I could have so much purpose and meaning in this life. I think these same things, okay? Yeah, okay. Here's the deal. I think the same things. It's a temptation. At the root of that, though, is a love of money. It's a belief that money can solve issues, that money can provide the things that are missing in your life. And when you have that temptation, you're being tempted by the love of money because we see it as our ticket out of all of our issues. Instead of who? God. Okay? What love of money is this. It makes you put your faith in money to achieve the things that only God can achieve in your life, to the point that you go, God is no longer necessary in my life. And what we can do is this. We can play religion, we can go to church, but we can love money because money is going to be the thing that solves all of our issues. And God, well, he's a side thing. And we replace God with money. We consider money to have the power and God to have none. That is when we are in a place of loving of money. Let me go on to verse 9 of chapter 6 there. It says this: "But people who long to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many foolish and harmful desires that plunge them into ruin and destruction." Okay? We have to understand we live in an environment, we live in a society where we have been conditioned to only want what we want until we have it. And then what it does is once we achieve and get the thing that we want, we no longer are content in getting that. We are actually moved on to getting the next thing that we need to get our hands on. If you have a mobile phone, this is how they market to you constantly. How many of you have a Galaxy S9? Does anyone have the Galaxy S9? Nobody. Good job, Jerry. Wait, is 9 the new one? Who has an 8? Who has an 8? Okay, there we go. There's like 6 of you. Here's the thing. We see this in the marketing of products like this. Every year they release one, right? And they tell you it's the next greatest, best, wonderful thing for your life, and if you get this, you'd feel content, you'd feel wonderful. As soon as you buy it, and 2 months after they release the newest cell phone, what do you hear advertised? The next one. Next year's we already having to work, and here's the new things that are going to be on that, and can't you wait for the next 8 months to go get that one? That's our culture. That's how we're advertised to from the time we were infants, is the what you want what you want until it's yours. You want it, you get it, and then you go, I got it. And then they tell you, now you need to go get this. And you are never content. You're always wanting the next thing. And that's what this scripture is talking about when it says people who long to be rich fall into temptation are trapped by many foolish and harmful desires and plunge them into ruin and destruction. Sadly, I see this spiritual cancer in people from time to time, and I got to tell you, it's heartbreaking. I see people who know what their calling is from God, that have incredible potential to do kingdom work and to do things for God's kingdom, but yet they pursue things of this world that they think they can attain through money. They try to get affluence, they try to get money, they try to buy items, they do things to try to build all those things so people look at them and go, you're wonderful, you've achieved it, you are what we all want to be. And instead of making God the purpose, we make money, and money's the thing that's going to get us to that place where the world looks at us and goes, I want to be like you. And I have seen Christians fall to this temptation. Christians who go, I know what my calling is, but then go, but I want the house. I want the cars. I want to have this. I want to have that. And God, they're still Christians. They still go, yeah, I love him. But they throw God's desires to the side and go, but this is what I'm pursuing because I have to have the house. I have to have the car. I got to have these things that money will provide me. So I have to do whatever I can to get more money. And as a Christian leader, as a minister, I look at that and it breaks my heart because I go, I see people who could do incredible things for God's eternal kingdom, and they get caught up living their lives for this temporal kingdom. And it's heartbreaking. And that's what this scripture is talking about. Let me go to this verses 6 through 8. It goes on. It says this, yet true godliness with contentment is itself great wealth. After all, we brought nothing in with us when we came into this world, and we can't take anything with us when we leave it. So if we have enough food and clothing, let us be content. All right, here's my question when I read this one. Is that even possible in our society today? Here's what he says at the end, verse 8. So if we have enough food and clothing, let us be content. Content in life. You got enough food on the table, you got clothes to wear, you should be content in life. Let me tell you what God's telling you when you put that whole scripture together. He's saying this basically. God is saying if you have enough food, if you have enough clothing, and if you have a heart for the things of God, life can't get any better for you. You are truly at that point defined in God's standards as being someone who's incredibly wealthy. If you have enough food, enough clothing, and a heart for the things of God, you are incredibly wealthy. You are rich. Life can't get any better. That's what God is saying. Our world will tell you all day long that's not true. God is saying if you want to feel rich, if you want to feel contentment in life, if you want to have true purpose in your life, and you want to be wealthy beyond all imagination, all you have to do is go, I have food, I have clothing, I have a heart for God, and you've already made it. And you should be content with that. But it's so hard in our society today. It's so hard to be content with just going, that person has all that stuff and I only have this. It's so hard during hard financial times when we lose stuff. I see people deal with this, okay? They lose things they attained and they're heartbroken because they lost temporal things of this world and had to downsize. And they're heartbroken and they feel like their lives are at a ruin. I see us dream about moving to nicer neighborhoods and getting nicer homes and getting nicer cars and all those things. And we desire them and work for them and try to go, we have to get that to attain that thing I'm looking for. And what Jesus is telling you is this, no, if you have food and you have clothing and you have a heart for God, you should be completely content and realize you are rich beyond imagination. And that's what the scriptures tell us. But the destructive power of money doesn't let us find contentment in those things, although God says that's where you'll find it. All right? This morning, I'm just going to close up reading you a story that Jesus says. And he says this in Luke chapter 12, verses 15 through 21. And he gives us, it's not a parable, it's a story he tells. He says this, then he said, beware, guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own. What? Life is not measured by how much you own. Wait a second, that's everything life is measured by, isn't it? Is by what you have, to show people of what you have. Jesus says, life is not measured by how much you own. Then he goes on, he tells a story. He says, then he told them the story. A rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. He said to himself, what should I do? I don't have room for all my crops. Then he said, I know, I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll have room enough to store all my wheat and other goods. And I will sit back and say to myself, my friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry. Before you go on, don't move it yet, Chuck. This is what America tells us. Keep attaining more, get bigger bank accounts, so at some point you can do this magical thing, retire. And you can sit back, eat, drink, and be merry, right? Is that not exactly what the American dream is? That's what we're told is the ultimate achievement of your life, is to build a big enough barn to fit all the stuff you've acquired so you can sit back at the end of life and go, I can eat, sleep, and be merry, or eat, whatever he says, eat, drink, and be merry, okay? Here's the next line. But God said to him, you fool, you will die this very night. Then you will get everything you worked for. Okay? It's one, I love Jesus' stories. Like you get into it and go, yeah, that makes sense, Oh, sorry, no, that didn't make sense. I didn't like that at all. Okay? He says, you fool, who's going to get everything when you die this very night? Who's going to get it? You acquired a bunch of temporal stuff you can't take with you. It has no real value other than the way the world makes you put value on it. It doesn't really have any eternal significance, and you worked your entire life for that, and now you're going to die, and you get to enjoy none of it. And he wraps it up with this line. He says this, yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. So the way he ends it is this. Having money isn't a problem. Being retired isn't a problem. Accumulating great wealth isn't a problem if it's just a secondary thing in your life. But if those things take priority over having a rich relationship with God, you're a fool. All right? Nothing more I can say this morning than this. Don't be that guy. Would you pray with me?